Good morning and happy Friday. My name is Amy Kochek with Amy Kochek Creative, and we are live with another episode of Extraordinary Stories with Extraordinary People. I am so excited about what we've been doing and even restarting the interviews that we've been having, just the one that we did a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you all were able to catch it, but it is the epitome of why we do what we do, which is share stories of incredible human beings on the planet that are doing really great things. My business, Amy Kochek Creative, focuses on people's stories. I'm a writing coach. I'm an editor. I'm a ghostwriter. I'm all things story because I believe that the most important, valuable asset that you possess in your life is your story. So we are not going to waste time because I know that y'all are ready to hear a story because you've been sitting in your house every day and maybe you're bored or maybe you're overwhelmed or maybe you're feeling fearful. If there was ever a time to share stories with each other, it is now, because if we think back over our lives, a lot of us have been through amazingly difficult situations and have come out of it on the other side better. And today is no different. So I am super excited. I have my guest, AK, here. Yes. So, AK, first, I want you to just tell us who you are. Basic number one interview question. Tell us something about you. Give us a base for who you are, where you're from. What do you do?
Yeah, first, Amy, just want to say thank you for, having me on. And I would say I completely agree when you talk about a story. We have so many different layers that make us who we are. And so I love that you said, tell me more about you rather than say, what do you do? Because we do so many different things. Right now, currently, I've been in my house for 2 weeks in Boston. A little bit about me, I'm actually a triplet. So I have a twin brother and a twin sister, and I'm the youngest of 6. The thing that I've always been really important part of my life is sports. I was a former professional and All-American athlete, track and field athlete from the University of Oregon. But I've done a lot of different things, and I believe that everything that I've done from education and through sports and even through entrepreneurship has really made me who I am. And I would say one of the biggest factors of who I am, I'm gonna talk about a little bit, is my little girl. She's 7 years old and her name is Haven.
I love that. Okay, so let's jump right into, we're gonna talk about a major pivotal moment in your life where things kind of changed. So I want you to kind of set up the story. What was going on in your life before this big moment? Yeah. What were you doing? Who were you? And then take us to that pivotal moment in your life where things started to shift.
Right. No. Take it to that moment when it all came crashing down. Just joking. Yeah. So for me, the reason why I talk about sports is a really big, important part of my life is actually, I did track and field at the University of Oregon. And I was lucky. I've always wanted to be an Olympian and be able to, represent my country on an international stage. And in 2012, I had an opportunity, I qualified. And then through uncertain news and some political situations, I wasn't able to go. And I saw the Olympic Games from my house in 2008, Beijing, China. But that's not the pivotal moment. That's just kind of the lead in. So that's not a pivotal moment? Like, nah, not yet.
That was huge, but yeah.
Making the Olympics, but not making it. Not the pivotal moment. But so why that comes together is in 2016, I was going to try for my last chance at the Olympic Games. And at that same time, I had an opportunity to do this sports diplomacy initiative with the US government to use sports to promote peace in Haiti. Now, in this city called Soleil, it's one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the world. And the goal was to use VR technology and sports to help rebuild diplomatic relations. But it was happening at the same time. It's either that I train for the Olympics or I do the sports diplomacy initiative with the US government. And I ended up choosing the sports diplomacy initiative with the US government. And at that moment, I was like, oh my goodness, my whole life's going to change. I'm going to win this SB, all this kind of this crazy stuff. And, you know, I've told a little bit of this story beforehand, but I haven't told you like this part. I don't think I've told anybody really this next part. So stay tuned. We were able to get some funding beforehand, but this was also during the kind of the political season when there was some unfortunate news happening about fundraising efforts within, I think, the Clinton Global Initiative. So it was just hard to raise funds. So we were able to get some money, but we were already in like Sports Illustrated and we were going to be taking our team there. And I'm like, I don't have the money to do this event. And so I actually ended up for 3 months before the event living in my car to save money. And but for me, I'm this athlete. I'm like, you know, I'm going to do this. Like, you put everything into it, and it's all going to succeed. And so we were able to get some things moving. And in preparation, as we were getting ready for this event, everything was working well, right? We're getting some people coming on board. The U.S. ambassador said he was going to come, like the first time in a long time, to actually help coach these kids, these 300 kids at the event. Everything was working well. And a week before the event, my team gets on the ground. It's 4 of us. And mind you, we've done this a few different times and everybody's saying, don't go because it's really dangerous. So we went from a team of like 10 on the ground to like 4. And on the ground, I was the only one that's done it beforehand. And I'm leading a group of 3 others. So while we were there for the week, we just started getting this like unfortunate news that was happening. So, for example, when we got on the ground, everybody spoke. Well, during the preparation, everybody spoke English. But during preparation, everybody spoke French. And I don't speak a lick of French. And only one guy spoke French. But beforehand, that means we had to literally go around wherever he went to. So us 3 or 4, all had to go together rather than separating at our own different locations. In addition, we had a whole bunch of sponsors that were going to come on board. And they just said, hey, well, we already got what we needed. We already got in the newspaper, and then they kind of just started backing away. And at this moment, everything just started like falling apart. And it came into the night before the event, and the U.S. ambassador is supposed to be coming on the ground with the whole U.S. team, 300 kids, all these volunteers, and we get this call. I get this call literally late at night that says we need to come up with large sums of money. Or this event is not going to be able to happen the next day. And this is going to be the safety of your team getting out of the country. And I'm like, so at this moment, imagine what I'm thinking, like, I already gave up this chance for the Olympics. I'm about to lose this opportunity. And I'm looking at my team of sitting on the ground, sleeping. I'm seeing them sleeping. And they don't even know what's going on. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there and I have to come up with $15,000 and in about 7 hours, or this thing is not gonna be able to happen. And I don't know what's gonna happen. My whole name, like even like the day before, we did a big press conference with United States, Haiti, and all of us, and I was the front guy there. And at that moment is like my rock bottom moment. I felt like I lost everything. And at that moment, I get a FaceTime call from my daughter, and she's super excited. She's like, "Daddy, daddy, daddy! Like, guess what?" And I'm like, "What?" Like what? And she said, I drew your picture. And the picture was of me and her holding hands. And it was at that moment that I realized, like, she did not care about this sports diplomacy initiative. She didn't even care about the Olympics. What she just cared about was daddy. And it's at that moment that I realized a lot about me, that I'm more than just an entrepreneur. I'm more than just, I'm an athlete, but I'm also a father. So that was kind of the pivotal moment, but there's things that happened afterwards that kind of still went to go, but that's kind of that pivotal moment. I was able to get the money, but I had to do this new gig that I just got, and I had to do a 3-month advance.
Yeah.
But after that, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack. So I'm going to go back to go forward. So take us through the thought process of having to choose between the Olympic Games, which I'm assuming that you have been training for, and this opportunity with the U.S. government. How do you make such a massive decision like that and then end up going with what was more appealing about going with the U.S. government option than it was to fulfill what I'm assuming is a big dream of going to the Olympics? How does that walk us through that process in your mind?
That was a few years ago. For me, when I was thinking about that decision, it was more along the lines of one was about just me and one was about others. And at the end of the day, yeah, I can get the Olympics, but I was an All-American. And yes, it was a dream that I've had beforehand, but this is an opportunity I felt that I can bring a lot of people on board with this particular mission, right? It's going to be 300 kids. It's countries coming together. I just felt it was just a bigger impact that I could do.
Yeah. So with the job with the U.S. government involving, like you said, Haiti and kids, what's the exact job title for you? Like, what is it that you're being tasked to do that's attractive to who you are as a person?
Well, yeah. So the company that I had at the time was called Empowered to Play. So we did sports diplomacy and like youth empowerment. And so for me, I mean, really why that's important is like most people don't know I'm 6'3", 220 pounds. When I was growing up, I got picked on a lot. Like really, I'm talking about I was a kid that got pushed into lockers. I was a kid that got like discriminated against in so many different ways that I was told I was never going to amount to anything. So in some ways, this Empowered to Play was kind of a reflection of who I was because sports was the thing that got me an opportunity. And so for me, this was my way I felt of like giving back in a way because sports education has really been a big, important piece of my overall life and my overall story. And I can now do this for potentially 300 kids to give them an opportunity as well. And also bring the community together.
Yeah. So when you are at the point of you have the event's almost going on, then you find out you need $15,000 in 7 hours.
Yeah.
And I assume that you make that happen. Does the event then occur or were you not able to do the event?
Yeah, it was. It was extremely successful. It was a very successful event for others. But I would say by the end of it, I was just mentally, emotionally fatigued.
Yeah.
And I remember we were supposed to stay for another 3 days, but I think I got the next flight out the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting on that flight and sitting there and thinking about all the stuff that went on. And there's more stuff that happened after this too. But when I was sitting on that plane, I was thinking to myself, I don't think I'm ever going to touch this organization again. It would have been easier for me because leading up to the event, I was doing a lot of social media posts. I was really out there a lot. And it felt as though by putting myself out there, it put me at risk a lot. And so a lot of people wonder, like, why are you I'm on social media, but sometimes I step away if I get too much out there because it brings me back to that putting myself out there. And then all of a sudden I feel, okay, it's just weird. So there's certain effects that have happened because of that. I still get over it, there's some stuff that happened recently that's actually having me get over it more, but it was just a really, important moment, a pivotal moment that I would say was actually a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. So what happens after it? Do you continue to work for the government? What's the transition after that really intense moment for you?
Okay. So we'll go to where happens at the aftermath.
Okay.
So, right before I went to Haiti, I just moved into this new place. So when I get out back home, like the company that I had was just like, okay, it was successful, but it was just so emotionally exhausting. I think it was like a week later, a big hurricane happened in the country as well. And so as it's a week later, I'm dealing with, I have no money because I've already done a 3-month advance. But I just moved into a place. There's a hurricane in the country and I'm getting phone calls saying, hey, we're dying out here. We need some help. And instead of these being Haitians, these are not people that I know by name. And I felt that I couldn't help. And I'd reach out to people like, oh, well, something always happens in Haiti. It's hard to, help. But I felt like all of a sudden I was just at a loss. And then at the same time I was coming back, it was around my birthday afterwards. And I needed to get my license renewed because it happened when I was overseas that it renewed. And that day when I was driving with my daughter to go drop her off at her mom's place, I get pulled over. And my lowest moment was afterwards. The cop says, "Hey, you need to get your license renewed." I was like, "Well, I'm going to. I just came back from overseas." He ends up towing my car. I basically get arrested. And I think at that moment I was like really my lowest because like I tried to do something good, you know? And I lost everything and more in that process, right? And so it came to me when I really got to this lowest point of like having no money. There were certain friends that I had that they heard what happened and they just said, "Hey, we're not talking to you anymore." They thought I was.
Why did they, so they heard that you got arrested and decided
No,
not
no,
to
no.
talk?
They heard that the event didn't go successful, so they kind of like distanced themselves.
Yeah.
Other business people. So all of a sudden, when you're trying to do something that you thought was good, you lose not only your kind of your friends, were they really friends? You lose your money, you lose the opportunity for a dream that you have. Now you're in like legal troubles, and I'm like, what's going on? You know, and that was kind of like the lowest moment. But at that point, when I got to that lowest moment, when my daughter was crying as a car was getting towed, that's when I kind of opened up and I told my parents and my family what was going on. And that actually was able to bring out, like, you don't always have to hold things inside, right? You have people around you that can help you, but you don't always have to have this ego. And that's what this event kind of helped me understand is like, remove the ego. Understand that there's more layers to you, right? You're not just one thing, you have multiple different layers. And so for me, it was really just like a blessing in disguise because I learned so much through that process. And then the aftermath is I luckily got this consulting project to do some work. And this was also during the election time, which was really negative news. And I actually ended up going to China and traveling for about 2 months. And what I realized was just being in a different scenery actually helped me overcome and see that the world is much bigger than this small place and environment that I'm in.
Yeah. I want to talk about because I think that this is such an appropriate concept of sometimes in life when you're offered two choices, right? Like two roads, and you choose one road, and then in your mind you have an idea of what's going to happen. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you're like, this is it.
This is it.
Like the opportunity, and you're like, I'm going to do this, and this is God. This was divine. And then sometimes what happens is a series of events that in your mind make you think I made the wrong choice, or I'm going in the wrong direction, or I'm cursed. And then you hit a really low. So for you, how did you process through the making the choice and then getting all of these consistent hits that keep bringing you lower and lower? How do you process through that and then let that dream die so you can open up an opportunity for another thing to come into your life? How did you go through that process?
Right. So sometimes, I mean, we look at the world very linearly, right? This is where I wanted to be. Let me just get this camera frame. This is where I wanted to be, and this is where I am, and this is where I want to be, right? I remember I was sitting at home and I realized, like, why do we have to see things so linear? What happens if we actually change the shape? And instead of putting it into a line, I put it into a circle. So if you put those two ends, you realize together, you actually realize that they're right next to each other. And what I needed to realize was not about me making the Olympics or me making this sports diplomacy initiative. What I realized it was my identity was tied into outside factors, right? I was waiting until I became an Olympian, until I reached out to Nike or I did these opportunities. I was waiting to do this sports diplomacy initiative until I do X, Y, and Z. And I realized, like, nah, dude, what you have, you already have. You have your daughter. You have all the stuff you have the friend. You have those things, but you didn't realize it because you're always trying to chase. So, for example, one of my co-founders, I have a clothing company, and he has 2 Olympics. And the reason he has 2 is he got the first one, and he woke up the next day, and he was expecting the world to be different. And it wasn't. It was still the same. The day after effect. Like, you know what I need? You know what I need? I need a second Olympics. And so he went and got the second Olympics. Woke up the next day. And what happened? The world was still the same. And so what this is, we have this day after effect. We're always trying to wait for this end goal of where we want to be and not realize it's the journey, right? If I were to look at myself today, the decision that I had was I could either do the Olympics or I can either do the sports diplomacy initiative with the US government. Some people right now are just trying to find, where am I going to get my next meal from? Am I even going to get my paycheck next week? You know? And so it helped me realize, like, stop looking here and start seeing here. Because if you're not happy here, you're not going to be happy when you get there anyway.
Yeah. So you said something so powerful, and I want to know how that learning process came for you. When you said you realized that your identity was tied into everything outside of you and that you had to look within to find your identity, how did you do that? Once you realize it, because it's not, half the battle really isn't knowing, the battle is doing.
Yeah.
So how did you go through the process of saying, I'm no longer going to put my identity outside, I'm going to look for it inside? What did that look like for you?
Well, it was a reminder multiple different times. It was the reminder of when I was getting beat up on when I was in elementary school. It happened when I was, looking to do the Olympics and I didn't make it. It was this reminder which says, dude, you have it. And it was that ego hitting those rock bottom moments to realize that, and even the conversation with my daughter, that moment when it was all like, dude, like, that doesn't matter. It's all a social construct that you're creating in your own mind. You put value to it. Other people put value to it. And so what I now do, you see, is I'm not just one thing. I'm not just, like I said, an entrepreneur. I'm not just a businessman. I'm not just a father. I'm not just, dyslexic. There's so many different layers to each and every one of us. But at the same time, just as much as we're everything, I hope you understand this next part, but like, we're also nothing. We can create our own story. We can create our own journey, depending whatever we want it to be. And now the way that I also realize this is it's not always about looking internally, but it's also about looking external. I can't put labels and judgments on other people either, right? If I look at other people and I put them into this box, I'm also putting myself into a box. I don't care if you're a homeless person or Bill Gates. There's information, there's knowledge that we can learn from every single person in their own sphere. And if you remove that ego, if you remove that layer, you can actually realize we can connect, we can learn, and we can grow from every single person around us if we remove ourselves out of that box.
Yeah, I love that. So take us to where you're in China. So you've had the super low moment. You're in China, your eyes are open, you're seeing a different perspective. How does that turning point in your life then catapult you into the next phase of your life? And how does it make that next phase of your life better?
Right. Since then, I've now let go, meaning I'm no longer I don't put myself in control. Meditation is really important to me. So most people would be surprised to say, like, okay, well, you went from being rock bottom, and then 2 years later, 3 years later, you've been lucky to speak and travel all around the world, working with victims of terrorism, working with professional athletes, with celebrities. I was actually just working with Google, about to just get on the road and start the speaking series before Corona happened. Started a clothing company. It was through not feeling as though that I need to control everything. It's about letting go, trusting your intuition, and just saying yes instead of saying no sometimes, and enjoying the journey. It's not about the end goal for me. It's about, am I, by the end of tonight or by the end of tomorrow, whatever it needs to be, happy with the results that I made? And knowing that life happens like the stock market, mm-hmm. up and down. And it's also those sad moments that make you appreciate the happy moments. And it's those painful moments that make you appreciate the lovable moments. And you need both of them.
Yeah. So if you had to sum up one major lesson, now obviously there's probably multiple, but from that experience, what do you think was your biggest takeaway, like your biggest aha from that?
And this is where I would say I live my life around. I kind of call this kind of like unbranded. I believe that we put ourselves into these individual boxes each and every single day. And I would say that this is the number one problem facing the world today, is the boxes that we put ourselves into. It's either I'm a Democrat or just a Republican, either I'm Black or I'm white or I'm this title or that title. and not realizing that we have multiple different layers to each and every one of us. You can be a Republican and a man and an athlete. And if I can't connect with you on one level, I can maybe connect with you on another level. Because if you're not able to connect with people or see them, you're not going to be able to connect with them. And so for me, I do a lot of different things because I believe that life is about the journey. And, last piece, like the longer-winded answer, is we look at this world and we define success based on the hours of what we do between the hours of 9 to 5. But I do this activity. I travel all around the world and I help people identify the main drivers that they have, the multiple different identities and the drivers that really drive their decisions. And for most of us, our work isn't even the top, we'll say like 60%, isn't even in that list. And so when we look at our own lifestyle design, when we think about success in our own journey, we want to make sure that we put the things that are most important to us in that beginning part of the day or in part of our days as we're creating this lifestyle design. And the journey that we create is our own internal journey and nobody else's. One lifestyle design is different than everybody else's. So my final thing to say is, we only have one life to live. Tomorrow is not guaranteed, and it is designed that you create for your own journey that you create, and that only you can evaluate.
Yeah. I want you to talk directly to somebody watching either live or on replay. And I want you either to provide a word of encouragement or some sort of strategy and tool, but I want you to talk directly to someone who may be at a really low moment. Maybe like you, they made a decision and that decision was supposed to take them down a road that doesn't look like what they thought it was going to. Or maybe they're struggling with the unknown or with the control issues. Maybe they're just at a really low moment. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate, especially now from what's going on externally. So what would be one thing that you could say to them based on your own experience and journey and wisdom?
I would say right now, as we're hitting in this situation that everybody around the world is being hit with in some capacity, one way or another, it is at time to, one, kind of just do a reset. Right? It's that reset. And there were so many different times when I was seeing things through here, but I wasn't seeing these things through here about those outer layers. So I'd say at this moment is about your time to, one, I would say, how do you change the perspective? It might be, you might be at home. How can you now say, well, now I get to spend time with my family more, or now I get to find tools and resources to be able to connect with people virtually, right? Or this might be the time, like, maybe it's the time for me to gain new skills, and maybe it's a time for things just to slow down. And maybe this is what I needed. Sorry about that. In this more moment, it was these moments. So I just say like this. I think right now it's just time for us to lean on each other. Is this a time for you to take a reassess of who you decide to be? Because we only have a choice in life. For me, I remember when I hit my rock bottom, I had two choices. And it was either that I could quit or that I can keep on going. And I admit sometimes I quit. But if I just take that choice, just like, okay, I'm just going to keep on going just a little bit, it's going to build up on each other. And you're going to start building up these tiny little muscles. And by the time this is all over, you're going to realize that you're stronger than you think you are. But you're also sharing this with the rest of the world that's also right there behind you. So this might be the time to reach out to people that you've never reached out to before. Try new tasks and skills you've never done before. Because once you overcome that fear or the unknown, the possibility is yours about how you want to create the next steps moving forward.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. So last question, AK, if anyone on here has a desire to reach out to you or learn more about you, how can they do that?
Yeah, they can connect with me on Instagram. It's ak.com. I do have a fashion company. I do work with strategic advisor for a company called The Human Side, where we actually help in creating human connection. and human empowerment, and then also do speaking and coaching. So they can connect with me, or I can just help them, just talk them through it. And happy to, because I know this is a difficult time for many.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your story, your vulnerability. I so appreciate you for coming on. And I appreciate all of you for watching, for being a part of this extraordinary story with an extraordinary individual. Make sure that you tune in next week. As always, thank you, AK, for joining us. And remember, it's our stories that connect us. So like AK said, maybe use this time to connect. We have a greater opportunity to really genuinely connect with each other. And that's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. Have a wonderful weekend. And we will see you next week. Thanks, AK.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Take care.